Race wheels. Not everybody has them. Everybody wants them because they look super cool, right? Who doesn't want to go flying down the road on their super duper tri bike with their super duper awesome race wheels, right? So we're not going to get into should you use them, why you use them, when you use them, should you spend the extra money on them, what should you be spending your money on instead. Instead, we're just going to go over the fact. So you've gone over that, and you have to have them. There's a good question that I was just asked, and I've looked into myself, is renting race wheels versus going out and buying some and using them. And especially, I have athletes doing Ironman Tulsa, so there's going to be wind. So you got to take that into consideration. You got to look at your race and conditions of the race. Are you going to go in an area that's super windy? Are you going to go into an area like Tulsa? It could get pretty windy out there, and you're going to be in some open stretches probably where crosswind is going to be a problem. So if you got deep front wheels, it could be a problem. So you have to take that into consideration. If you're doing like a race like Ironman Florida, where it's pretty flat, but it does get super windy usually. But you have to deal with like kind of a little 10, 12 mile per hour headwind at times. Something like that, something like some deep dish wheels. If you don't have to deal with much of your crosswind, if you get in the deeper in the front, the better, and the less resistance you'll have for that race. So you have to look at the race you're doing, the conditions you're going to face, because that's going to kind of a little bit dictate more what type of wheel you can use. You know, deep wheels, 404 zips, front and back, 404 front, 808 back, 1080 on the back, 1080 on the front. Are you going to use disc wheels on the back? Are you going to use, you know, there's plenty of other brands out there. There's Flow, Envy, Vision. I mean, good Lord, there's more than you shake a stick at. But the main thing I want to point out is considerations when you're looking at, there's racewheels.com. I've looked into it, but I've never rented race wheels. I've got my own. So I've gone through, I've had 404 front and back, and those were clincher wheels, and then went to an 808 in front and 1080 on the back, and those were tubular. Then went to, I believe that's where I went to 808s on the front and the back. So these are, because I didn't like tubulars just for the fact that if you've got it flat, you're kind of hosed. There are ways to get around it, but ultimately I didn't want to deal with it. I did learn the hard way that if you don't have the right valve extenders, even on 404s, then that's going to be another point. I didn't write that up there. If you do rent them, make sure that you have a flat tire repair kit and valve extenders. I've done plenty of videos going over valve extenders. If you want to know the exact type that I use the ones that have removable cores, and you have to have the inner tubes with removable cores because it can't remove the core on the inner tube to replace with the extender that has a removable core. Then you're screwed. It's almost nice enough to give me a tube, but unfortunately it didn't work because I couldn't take the core out. So after that learning experience, I felt a lot better with clinchers because I've got extra valve extenders. But if you rent race wheels on site, to go out there and you don't have the right flat tire kit, you could be screwed out there if you get a flat and you have no way of changing that. You're reliant on a bike tech hopefully finding you. Hopefully they have valve extenders. Hopefully they can hook you up. Because there's different valve extenders that are taped in there and glued. It's just kind of, you know, the valve is left on the tube on the inside. If you get to it, you're kind of screwed on that. Like I said, if you want to know more about the flat tire portion, components, and all that other stuff that I use, I've done other videos of that. Just let me know. I can point you in the right direction. But make sure you have a flat tire repair kit that matches whatever wheels you buy them, or if you have them, rent them on race day, make sure you have them. But personally, I've gone back to 808 front and back. I had to convert it to 11 speed to go with my bike, so you gotta make sure you can the right cassette going with it. And basically, I use this for all my races. I don't really change out cassettes too much. Like Ironman Tulsa, the first 100 feet of elevation change, I probably won't change my cassette because it's not super climbing. It's just kind of long ascents and stuff like that, so it's nothing too crazy. But these are my wheels. I use it for every race. I put them on maybe a week before the race and go out and do a few rides on them, make sure everything's good, make sure the spokes and everything, they're trued up. I put them on my bike when I send it in for a tune-up. So they get checked to make sure they're true, and then true them up if there are any problems. They go through, make sure all the spokes are good, all the hubs are good. There's nothing busted on them. Because I did that. Well, my road bike, it had the regular wheels on there, and they found that one of the rims was actually busted. So we had to swap that out because that's pretty dangerous. So that's kind of a nice thing with if you have your own wheels, you can get them checked out, make sure they're good, and kind of know them. With race wheels, the rental wheels, we're going to make the assumption that they check them. I would stand to venture a guess that there's no way that they'd be out there running wheels unless they knew they were good. But we're all human. We all make mistakes. I just hate to see on race day to get through, do a race and you have a problem with wheels. But anyway, so this is what I do. I have my own wheels. I found them used, I think, on Slow Twitch Classifieds. Got them shipped to me. I used switched out the tires to what I want. Did Continental, I believe, or Forte. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But I got them all set up how I want them. I wanted clinchers, I wanted 808s, and I am comfortable in a stiff crosswind in an 808. So I don't have any other wheels. If it's going to be windy out there, I'm going to live and die with my 808s on the race course. That's just the way it's going to be. But you do have the options. You can rent them on site, and they've got tons of different configurations. You can do disc wheels, deep rim. You know, you change the depth on the front and the back, and typically they're using zip wheels. I think some might use other brands. There's race wheels. I don't know. I don't think they rent them for events, but you can buy them on site. But when you rent them, it's usually like $250 to $400. So if you're doing one race a year, so let's say it's $250. So you do maybe an Ironman and a half. So that's $500 in 1 year, and then you do it again the next year. So that's another $500. So you spend $1,000, which you could get a decent used set, but you don't have to spend the expense of getting them checked and truing them up and doing all the maintenance and everything. You just show up, it's like on your bike. They set you up to make sure your brakes are all good. But make sure if you have disc brakes or not. That could be a little bit more expensive. That might be up the price for getting renting race wheels on race day. But nowadays, a lot of bike companies, I go with Quintana personally, and their bikes, you can buy them with the deeper wheels. I think they're rentals, and they already have disc brakes on them. You don't have to worry about it. So pay attention to that when you buy a new bike, especially nowadays online. You could get them with race wheels, and usually they'll get you a pretty good price on them. So it's a decent option, and they're deeper than the regular just wheels, stock wheels that come with bikes. But you can rent them on site. So after a while, you probably end up spending more than new wheels would cost you. I've had these for 3 years. Like I said, it's around $1,000. So over time, they've kind of paid off, and I've used them for several 70.3s and 4 to 5, 6. I don't know how many Ironman races. I track it on Garmin, but I didn't look it up before this video. So you go out and buy a new, man, a new nice set, 808 Firecrest disc brakes, man. You can spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can spend as much as your bike's worth, probably on a nice set of race wheels. Used, you can get around $1,000. I think is a good price point for. Like I said, I found this set. They're probably 4 or 5 years old, so you're gonna get used equipment. But most people take care of them because they are expensive, and they don't use them for every race that they go out and race, or they don't use them for all their training rides. Some do, so you got to pay attention. I'll always ask for the best pictures and look at the rims and see if they're all scarred up and everything. But if you do your due diligence, you could spend some time and go through and find a good set of race wheels at a decent price that will last you a long time. So there's the new option. You know, if the sky's the limit and you've got the resources, I'd go out and buy the best, maybe a 808 Firecrest set, maybe a 1080 on the back. Personally, I'm not a fan of this. They're just kind of a pain, and we'll get into it, but you gotta take a few considerations in there. But sky's the limit, go out there and buy the best. But if you're on a budget, you know, and you do maybe an Ironman every other year, maybe a Ironman and a half, you know, something like that, maybe renting might be your best option because they're already taken care of. They already set your bike up to get there. They slap them on, you go out and ride them, you turn them back in, and you're good to go. And you've got your stock wheel set just in case something happens. You could always use them as backup. Considerations: will you keep them long term? So if you're going to keep them long term, if you find yourself you're in the lifestyle, you're in it for the long haul, make sure you get the right kind. So make sure you get the right depth. So if you only got an option for one set, maybe a 404 in front is the best option, or 60mm depth, or a little bit less, because if you get into crosswinds like Ironman Tulsa, you could experience, especially when they had Ironman Kansas 74.3, we'd have days where it was 20 mile per hour winds and 35-mile-per-hour gusts, and you're just blowing all over the road. If you had too deep a wheel, even a 404, I was getting pushed around a little bit. But if you're comfortable 808 with crosswinds, being in the aero position, it's going to take some effort, but it's possible that you can be fine and not have a problem. But just be mindful, the area you live in and the races you're going to do, get the right kind, get the right depth. So if you're uncomfortable with crosswinds, maybe the deeper wheels aren't the best for you. You could go clincher or tubular. Like I said, tubular is a little bit lighter, a little less resistance maybe to puncture, but and they're also coming out with other brands that are self-sealing and stuff, and basically they don't have a tube at all. They just go into the rim and you air them up, and they just push against the rim, and they have sealant in them. Personally, I'm not a huge fan. It seems like a little bit of a mess, but they can get taxed and stuff and still not deflate because the sealant fills the holes. But personally, I like clinchers because I can work on them at home, take them off. With tubulars, if you have to have them glued, that's probably $100 process. If you got to take them in and you have to have something done to them, and then the wheel or the tire has to be taken off, they got to glue those things back on there. It's a process, like loose, dry. It's just kind of a pain in the ass if you want to do it yourself. I've never done it myself. I don't want to. Clinchers are the best for me. And I've gone out and bought the right gear, the right extenders for the tubes and everything. So I'm all set. I know what I want. I stocked up, got the right tubes with removable cores. I'm good to go. So make sure you do your homework on what you want long term. Are you going to go used? Like I said, that's probably where you're going to find the best price points. Disc brakes. If your bike's got disc brakes, you have to get disc brake wheels. And at this point, it's only been out in tri-bikes for like 1 or 2 years. Those wheels are going to be expensive, even used. So keep track of that. So if you go out and you find a great deal, make sure it's the right wheel set. Make sure it's the right, we got cassettes. There's still 10 speeds out there, but 11 speed is pretty much a standard. So if you get a new bike, I had to convert mine from a 10 to 11 speed. So I had to take that into consideration with the price. That's another $100 just to swap everything out. So are you going to go with a power tap hub? So if you've got a wheel potentially that has a hub that measures power, so you have to take that into consideration. You're only going to have that on your race wheels, so you're going to ride with that all the time. If you want to have a power meter, or if you have other power meters, so pay attention. Power tap hub, it's especially nowadays that the pedals are so inexpensive or getting lower in price, a better price point. Power tap hubs are kind of, I think, a thing of the past, kind of phasing out. But pay attention when you're out there looking for your wheels. If you got a power tap hub, maybe you do, or maybe you don't need it. I don't know. But if that's going to be your sole source of power measurement, maybe you have a direct ride trainer. If you go right outside and you just use the stock wheels, you're not going to be able to measure power. Does it fit your frame? So some disc wheels, like rear, not disc brakes, but the wheels, actually a disc in the back, some of them will not fit all frames. So you have to be careful because the rims are a little bit wider, the hubs, the wheel near the hub is a little bit wider, and some disc wheels will not fit frames. Not every manufacturer has gone on board with making sure that their wheel is wide enough for every wheel type. So make sure your bike will accept the disc wheel, because I'd hate for you to go out and spend $1,000 on a zip disc, get it, and it rubs on your frame or something like that, or rubs on your brakes. You can't get them wide enough to be able to use your brakes and ride your bike. I'd hate for you to have that problem. So. But the flip side of this, and this is more like if you are going to go out and buy your own wheels, and you decided that you're going to have them as a consideration to take into account, is this a one-shot deal for race day? So the only time you're ever going to use these race wheels is for your Ironman race. The rest of the races you do, Olympics, sprints, halves, whatever you're doing around town, around home, you don't really care. So if this is just a one-shot deal and you just want them for that race day, renting is probably going to be the best option for you. So you make sure you get what fits your bike. So all these considerations, make sure that when you're picking the wheels, you get the right cassettes, right sizes, disc brakes or not, and stuff like that. So the more options, the more frills you get, the higher price it's going to be. If you're doing a set of 404s, clincher, 11 speed, clincher brakes, or that's probably going to be the low end of the spectrum. But if you're going 808 Firecrest, 11 speed on the back, and you're doing disc brakes, you know, you're going to have $400 or $500 for a race day. But if you're doing it on a one-shot deal, you know, maybe it's worth it for you. Maybe you're on the every other year for Ironman schedule, something like that. That's the way life plays out. You know, maybe that's the better option for you for race wheels. So I'll just go over a little scenario for my athlete who's doing Ironman Tulsa. He was kind of going, you know, asked my opinion on should he rent race wheels, or does he think he can find a nice set? And I think rental was like $250, $300, and he's thinking maybe, well, what if I have $500 to buy a nice wheel set? $500 for used race wheels. Let's just say 404s front and back, pretty simple, 11 speed clinchers, nothing too crazy. You're probably going to look $800 to $1,000 for anything from 4 to 5 years old. You probably get something older than that, but then you're taking your risk because, you know, who knows how many people they've gone through, how many miles they've really ridden on those things. Let's just keep track. $500, you probably get a set out there, but I would not have much confidence in doing a full Ironman race with them. But if you bump that budget up to $1,000 and you see this, even if he's doing the Ironman Tulsa and he didn't really have an Ironman past that in the future you want to see, but maybe he's like, I still want to do halves. I kind of think, you know, getting a race set would probably be to his advantage. He could use it for all the races he does around town. He'll be consistent doing triathlons afterwards. So I think renting them for Ironman Tulsa, he's got enough longevity, I think, in the sport that I think getting a nice used set of race wheels are pretty solid, I think would go a longer way. So that was my recommendation to him. But if he was a bucket list guy and he just wanted to do Ironman Tulsa, and after that he just wasn't really sure, rent the race wheels. That way you don't have any investment in it past that, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to look at them on your shelves. Be like, oh, I spent all that money. All they do is just sit there and collect dust. I use the crap out of mine. Like I said, I think I've done 4 Ironman races with them, 5, and I use them for every local race I do. I've used them for every half I've done, and I forget how many halves in the last few years, 6 half Ironman races and tons of local events and stuff. So I used the crud out of mine, and they were set up for my bike, and I have a long-term investment for them. But so for my athlete, I would look for used race wheels for Ironman Tulsa and keeping them afterwards. Like I said, bucket list, just look at race wheels and run them today. So that's my general recommendations. Look a little bit deeper into not necessarily are race wheels a good idea for you, but should you buy them or should you rent them? You've made the decision, I want them for race day. These are my recommendations, or should you buy them or rent them for race day? As always, if you got any questions or recommendations, or you're looking at a set of wheels and you have no idea if this is a good deal or not, send me the information, send me a link. I always like to go through and I nerd out that kind of stuff and doing research about the parts and stuff like that. And always have recommendations for people. So, got any questions, as always, drop